Greetings, friends. I am so pleased to be here with Micheal Pope, our conference lay leader, and Jeffrey Kuan, both of whom are our first elects delegates to General Conference. And we're here today to hear from them about the work that they've been doing, about the partnerships they've been creating across the connection, about the learning they've done around the legislation that's coming, and the conversations with people who will be impacted by this legislation in order to inform their work and their duty, indeed, at General Conference 2020. So we'll begin. Jeffrey, any beginning remarks about the work of the delegation?
Thank you, Selby, and it's always great to be working with my sister Micheal as we lead this delegation to General Conference. Bear in mind that we were elected in 2019 and for General Conference 2020. So this delegation has been at work for 5 years. It is just unprecedented. No doubt we have delegates, both General Conference delegate and reserve delegates, who for one reason or another could not continue serving on the delegation. But the rest of us have continued to be very committed to the work. And we have been meeting for 5 years, and more recently, we have been meeting almost every other week to do the work of the going through all the legislations, hearing from people from around the connection. And Sister Micheal has been leading us in all that process too. Micheal, you want to continue to say a few words about what we have been doing?
Yes, thank you, Brother Jeffrey. I just, first of all, siblings, I'm always so excited to point out to you the clergy and lay partnership that has to take place within our churches throughout the whole connection. Dr. Jeffrey Kuan and myself are an example of that we lead together and we bring our purpose and talents to the table. And so do the other delegates that have been walking with us during, as Jeffrey pointed out, for a very long time. And we're looking, in our meetings, we all report out on our committee work. We report out on what we're hearing in the different spaces and places that we have other work that we're engaged in the ministry of the church. We also have guests that come from all over the connection to talk to us about the impact of the budget, the number of legislation. You'll hear that number in a minute. Jeffrey and I will share it with you, but the number of legislation that we have and its impact on our agencies, on the way that we do business, and the way that we are going to go into the future as a courageous people of the United Methodist Church. Brother Jeffrey, you found out what the number is. So what's the number of legislation that we're going to be looking at, or amendments or propositions?
Friends, bear in mind that this is a continually postponed General Conference. And when we go to Charlotte, in just a matter of 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks, we will be looking at, hear this number, 1,099 petitions. 1,099 petitions. And all these groups have been hard at work. Many of us have been hard at work going through all the legislations. Bear in mind that none of us, there's no possibility for any of us as delegates to to even go through every single petition. And that's the reason why we have been meeting so frequently, so that we depend on one another to help us understand what is important and what are the amendments that we need to look at. Sister Michelle, what do you think are the most significant work that this conference will be engaging in? We have been talking about that. Everyone in the connection has been talking about that. And what are those? What are the 3 R's, Sister Michelle?
The 3 R's represent a powerful statement of the church. It's the removal of any language that would be demeaning, hurt, or harm any of the siblings of the United Methodist Church. That includes our LGBTQI community, but even around other issues of racism, other issues of genderism. So we're looking at all language that harms and divides us. So the removal of language. The other is the revised social principles. Now, as a conference, we've worked really hard on the revision of the social principles. Randall Miller, a delegate, as well as a member of our conference, was a part of that committee and brought that work to us, I think, over 5 years ago as we were looking at it and planning it. So the revised social principles is major to what we're going to be doing as we go forth. Again, looking at the language, looking at the impact of the social principles on the community that we serve, as well as the church community. And then regionalization is another area that we are talking about. Jeffrey and I will go in more detail momentarily, but those 3 R's are what all of us, and I have to tell you, friends, the Western jurisdiction delegates, we've met together. We've talked about those 3 R's. We're committed to those 3 R's. And so that's a really good thing that we've started the conversations prior to Charlotte, so that we don't have to worry about what we're thinking as we go there. We may not all agree on every single nuance of every single thing, but we believe that going forward, the United Methodist Church must remove the language that separates us. It must look at revised social principles that reflect the removal of those things, and then regionalization, which is a way that we can all come together and live within our book of discipline and within the social principles that we will be voting on in Charlotte. Jeffrey.
In fact, from my perspective, having this will be my 5th general conference. From my perspective, if this general conference does nothing else but pass these 3 R's, regionalization, removal of harmful language, pass the new revised social principles, this will set the church, the United Methodist Church, in a new path forward. It will be a church that will, through regionalization, will create a pathway for all the different regions in the world, from Africa to Europe, to the Philippines, to the US, set us on the same footing so that we can deal with contextual matters more directly and intentionally that affects our ministry in all our different contexts.
Yes, and Brother Jeffrey had this last week had invited a group of our siblings from across the pond. I always say on the Atlantic Ocean, across the pond, and they came and really discussed with us, that regionalization is, they're for it. They're for it because what Brother Jeffrey said, it allows us to be in ministry together. It allows us to work together, to change the world, to live in community, but also being respectful of the context in which every community has, which is very different. And I personally, and Jeffrey and I have talked about this, I think it removes the foundation of colonization that when we go with regionalization, then we're saying to our siblings, we love you, we want to be in ministry with you, we want to serve with you, but we're not going to tell you how your community should be when it's not a community that lives and thrives in the United States. I think this is a great move to the future of the church. Brother Jeffrey, I know you talked a little bit the other day about disaffiliation, and our siblings came and gave us some information. Would you share that?
Well, as many of you know, in 2019, the General Conference, a special called General Conference, passed paragraph 2553 that will allow disaffiliation on a matter of conscience relating to human sexuality. Over the last few years, we have seen how disruptive disaffiliation has been for our churches in the U.S. And the process has not been in some places not amicable, and it has disrupted our church life. But it was a process that was agreed on. Unfortunately, because of in some ways, because of the pandemic, disaffiliation, that disaffiliation clause has not been able to be implemented in central conferences. And so there are groups that are talking about, in fact, in many ways, on behalf of central conferences, that we need to vote to extend disaffiliation. In conversations with our siblings in the Philippines, in Europe, in Africa, over and over again, we are reminded that there are disciplinary paragraphs, because they are part of central conferences, that will allow churches, local churches, annual conferences to disaffiliate. And this is already happening in Europe, in Philippines, even in some churches in the African continent. So our siblings from other places in our globe, in our worldwide church, are telling us, do not extend this affiliation clause, because it will be disrupting. It will be very disruptive for their church life in all these different places. So we are trying to be good listeners, to engage in conversation, and to be willing to listen to what is helpful and not helpful to our siblings in the central conferences. What else are you hearing, Sister Micheal?
Well, you know, the other is the listening. I love that you brought that up. You know, we recently had a orientation for delegates in I can't remember where we were. Where were we, Jeffrey?
St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis, Missouri. It's been so many places recently. We were in St. Louis, and it was a wonderful opportunity to listen. What Jeffrey is, I think I've learned, is a delegate that my active listening has gotten better. That listening not just because of what I've been told or what I think is so, but listening with fresh ears, and then being inquisitive. One of the things that I've learned, and actually Brother Jeffrey has been a part of my mentoring there, is to read the legislation, to review it, and you know, 1,099 pieces of legislation, no way. But in my committee, 148, 150 pieces of legislation, I can review that and review it with an ear and an eye for not just where I live in California, Nevada conference, but how does this impact my siblings across the United States and across the whole global space that we live in? And what places of humanity need to be lifted up so that we can do this work without getting stuck in those areas where I think it's about me, or I think it's about this group or that group. But let's look at it from the totality. Why removal of language to Jeffrey is so important, because even though our LGBTQIA siblings have been victimized by this place that we have been, they are not alone. There is language within our work that alienates all people, alienates other groups of individuals, just even the way we talk about our young adults and children. For example, the Children's Sabbath is a piece of legislation that we're going to be voting on, that we actually live into it when it happens every October. These are great pieces of legislation that help us to grow and to look at our ministry as a collective body and not just in our area. I love the Cal Nevada Conference. Of course I do. So does Jeffrey. We've given our lives and hopes and dreams to this conference. But we also, as delegates, and our other delegates, are asked to look at the big panoramic view of how of what the impact will be on everything that we hear, everything that we vote on, and to do it with Christ-like vision and to dream like Jesus through it all. Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. Yeah, that's what I see and hear from a lot of our delegates. We're tired of fighting.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. Wow, a lot of work, a lot of prayerful consideration. We're so blessed to have the two of you at the helm for our delegation in California, Nevada. So 3 short weeks, you'll be coming together in Charlotte for General Conference. So tell me, what will that look like for you? What will you be doing? We know that there are 2 weeks, and the 2 weeks are different. So if you could talk a little bit about that and what your hopes are for your on-site engagement.
Well, Brother Jeffrey lands before me, so I'll let him start. He gets there before me because of some work. So why don't you start, Jeffrey, and I'll follow up.
Thank you, Sister Michelle. It's going to be 2 full weeks of work and conferencing. I have had the privilege of serving on the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters, and that committee, the Standing Committee meets on Sunday, so I have to fly in on that Saturday. So the Standing Committee will begin with its legislative work as well as a Standing Committee. So we will be working on that already. Then the delegates most delegates will come in the Monday before the start of the General Conference. The first week is usually devoted to legislative work. Each of our legislative committees, I believe we have 11 or legislative committees, and each committee will be processing the almost 100, some as Sister Michelle say, as many as 150 legislative items. And but there will be worship together. Other committees will be meeting, so there will be a lot of work. And I'm also looking to a lot of a celebration of our life together as United Methodists, even in the midst of perhaps the most destructive time in our denomination, where in the US, we have lost about 25% of our churches. But it will provide us an opportunity to work together, to think about the kind of church we want to be together for one another moving forward. Mm-hmm. We may be smaller, but I hope that we will be stronger so that we can rebuild our church, being provided providing ourselves with the opportunity to do ministry in our own contexts without the confines and of other areas needing to approve everything that we need to decide on. And I hope that coming out of this general conference, the second week will be in plenary session and voting on all these petitions. So I'm excited to see friends that we have been working with for all these years, and to find a way to connect with one another. What about you, Sister Michelle?
You know, in this Holy Week, I'm reminded that on Sunday, I will get up praising that our Christ has risen. And I look at the General Conference as an opportunity for the church to rise again, to be a pivotal force in the lives of not just the individuals who already know church, know Jesus, and know our faith, but for the communities around us that have no clue what it means to be in fellowship with people who believe as you do. And so the General Conference for me is a revisioning, as Jeffrey said so eloquently, of the church, and where young people and people yet to be born can join the church and know that no matter what, they are accepted and they can find a place that they can live out their divine purpose. I'm looking forward, as Jeffrey is, to seeing people that I've never met physically, but I've been in conversations with them for over 5 years now. And I'm really excited about meeting them in person, to give them a hug and say thank you for their time and energy in all of this. I'm looking forward to seeing our delegation shine. They've put in so much work, so many hours of Zoom calls, and we've tried to get together for lunch and dinner and can't because we're all over the conference. But these are dedicated individuals who have walked with Jeffrey and I, and I'm looking forward to just saying thank you to them and celebrating their hard work.